What's good? Welcome to Theo's Tailgate. This is actually the 20th ever episode of my podcast, so if you are tuning in or just supporting in any way, it really is much appreciated. And it was a pretty good week for Pittsburgh sports, or at least for the Steelers. You know, we went 2-0 after beating the Broncos, and the week before we beat the Falcons. The Eagles, on the other hand, actually lost to the Falcons on Monday, which I was not predicting that, honestly, kind of crazy. And I'm not the biggest Eagle fan, but I'm also not the biggest Eagle hater. So I support them when I can. I'm not throwing that up to hate on them for losing. I stole that from my roommate. He's from Philly, and I threw it up in honor of this 20th episode. It's gonna feature my boy Coach B, who's actually one of my favorite coaches of all time. He was my strength and conditioning coach and was also an offensive line coach up at Pittsburgh Central Catholic High School when I was there. He also played college ball at the same school I did for a little bit, IUP, where he was recently selected to the All-Decade Team on the offensive line. He's originally from Reading, Pennsylvania, and he's currently a father of two, personal trainer, mobility specialist. He kind of does it all, but let's jump into this episode with him. All right, so we got Coach B on here. How you, bro? I know you're a big Eagles fan. Y'all ain't really get the job done last night. Can I get your take on it?
Yeah, definitely disappointed on that last drive. I'm doing well though. I'm recovering from the loss right now. We didn't do hot that last drive. AJ Brown was out. I definitely see some things I like though. Jalen Hurts is running like he can be again. Defense looked good. We need to get a little more passion from the quarterback, but it's early yet, so we'll be all right. We're gonna be all right. And Atlanta Falcons a little better than I think most people think. That's a really good offensive line we played against yesterday. I think that's a postseason team if the Saints don't get themselves in. So I mean, we didn't lose to a bad team. And it's the NFL, it's any given Sunday, so it'll be all right.
For sure. And then originally from the other side of the state, the Reading area, tell me a little bit about how you became an Eagles fan.
Honestly, a lot of people there are just Eagles fans. I just started watching football, I think, at a really advantageous time to be an Eagles fan. Donovan McNabb era, the Eagles had went to four NFC championships in a row. That's kind of like when I started playing football, getting into football. I was around 2001, 2002-ish. And honestly, everything kind of just it's like here in Pittsburgh, when everybody's doing it, you're kind of easy to jump on the bandwagon, I guess I would call it, but we're from there. The big difference out there, though, is a lot of the cities are close to each other, so it's not like everybody out there is an Eagles fan. Like here, everybody's a Steelers fan. It's hard to find people from anywhere, but out there, you got Baltimore 2 hours away, New York Giants, New York Jets, both 2 hours away. The Redskins, now the Commanders, only 2 hours away. So I mean, you get a nice variety of stuff, but the majority for the Eagles fans out there.
And then you were a pretty good ball player yourself, attended Muhlenberg High School. Did you play both ways throughout high school, and what did your high school career look like?
I had a high school career that I don't think many people would have expected from the success I had in college. So I was originally just a lot of linemen. I was a defensive lineman just growing up young, through elementary school all the way through middle school. My sophomore year coming in, I can remember my coach, we had a Hall of Fame, actually, Pennsylvania coach, John Yoakum, came up to me one day in the weight room and was just like, if you want to get on the field early, go be an offensive lineman. So I kind of took to that. And just kind of fell in love with the position. I was very fortunate to have a good coach who came in young, his first year coaching job, actually. Nick Morrissey, who's actually the head coach of Governor Mifflin right now, where Nick Singleton's from. So he kind of took me under his wing and just taught me all the nuances of being an offensive lineman, from just the stances to the steps to hand placement to just understanding it on a deeper level. And it just gave me a really big advantage in high school, which is what I try to do now, and actually where I kind of got the concept of all my training at. So then I went sophomore year. I didn't really start too much. I played JV. I was fairly successful on the JV team. My first start came junior year. Junior year, my senior year were two of the best years that school's had. We won our first Quad A playoff game then. Made it 2 rounds both years in there. Had a pretty good high school run. I played with some pretty good guys out of my high school. And then from there, that's when I kind of got my opportunity at IUP, and that was all for just being an offensive lineman. Very fortunate to play for Coach Mike Campolo, which I know you know from your couple times you got at IUP. And from there, I kind of just fell more in love with the game, not even just playing the game, but just understanding like the film to it, and just like everything about being a football player. I mean, he's really good at just like finding. He's really good at helping you find what you love about the game, essentially, man. So I was very fortunate. I mean, he has over 20-some All-Americans since I've been there. I actually had the opportunity to play with 4 other ones, so I got to learn a lot from those guys and from everybody around there at that place. I mean, IUP, so this is a very special place to me.
Yeah, Coach Camp is the man on and off the field, and your quarterback at IUP during your time was actually Mike Box, who was the receiver coach for a little bit when I was at IUP. Does he have the arm that he claims he has back in the day?
Mike Box, he's gonna hate when I say this. So when Mike came in, I think we had a quarterback who had a bigger arm. I think Mike was more accurate though. And for the way that we played the game, we needed a quarterback that can kind of put it in the receiver's hands and like in the route the right way and get them moving. We were heavy in the run game. We were probably like 70, close to 70-30 run heavy. And when Mike Box came in, I mean, he did everything that he needed to do. Transferred from UConn. Actually, one of my best friends, honestly, got off the phone probably about less than an hour ago. We built a really good relationship. He was a really good leader there. Ended up coming back there, coaching for a couple of years. I mean, he was a good dude.
And we mentioned guys like Coach Camp and Coach Box. Would you say that the connections you formed on the field have helped you through this day?
Absolutely. I think the majority of the connections I still have, or I have, are from, that's a little man here. You're all right, Bull? The majority of the connections that I have are all from football. Whether it be guys I played with, guys I trained with, guys I coached with. A lot of my friendships come from just football. From high school, one of my best friends from back home, Brett Fox, who's in Florida now, who played at William and Mary. One of my best friends there. My Dakota's godfather was actually my left guard at IUP, Nick Carnicella. I think, and that's what's cool about football, is like the brotherhood aspect of it. I'm sure you the same, and a lot of football players, like the majority of the people that you know when you stick around are all football players, because like, oh, for real? Yeah. They're all football players because, you know, as a man, it's really hard to find a space where you have that many people who are all willing to sacrifice so much for a goal. You know what I mean? And like, you don't find that anywhere else. And I think that's why so many people get like, I always call it like addicted to the game. Like whether you don't walk away because you're a coach, or whether like you play arena football a little longer than you should, or I mean, even to the point where like the colleges some guys go to, they go just to play football. I think we really do just get obsessed with the opportunity to be able to do that with men. And I would just say in the job world, like I haven't experienced it. Most people I know haven't experienced something similar. I think that's the biggest thing, which is the connections in football. It's also why you see so many people who like own and run Fortune 500 companies where football players or athletes of in that perspective. So, I mean, I think that goes for a lot to say. Most of my relationships, honestly, are all based around football. I only have a few friends outside of football. Honestly, my job is because of football. I mean, I do what I do because I feel like I always say this. I feel like I have to get back to the game. You know what I mean? So like, I love my job. I always keep my job. I'm fortunate that I have a job where I get to stay in football and it takes care of my family, and it's not just a hobby for me. But for me, it's just like I'm giving back to the game. It's done so much for me, honestly. The game of football saved my life. Not even exaggerating about that one. So for me, it's all about it.
Yeah, I think the game of football might have saved my life too. No exaggeration.
Yeah.
Football opens numerous doors for guys. Some of them get degrees at a cheaper price. Were you one of the guys that took advantage of that?
Yeah. Honestly, when I say football saved my life, like I remember I got done my sophomore year in high school. I wasn't a great student at all. No exaggeration. I was coming from a 1.8 GPA. The assistant head coach pulled me in his office. He was the vice principal at the time, Mike Bish, and was like, "Hey, listen, this is your situation, scenario. I think you have an opportunity to play college football, but we got to work on the GPA, get your grades up, and stuff like that." And from there, like that was probably the most outside of being a father, that was the most life-changing moment of my life. Like that was the most life-changing moment, hands down. Because I had to be more serious about school. I really wanted to play the game. I really loved the game. I was the type of kid where like at 11 years old, I was watching the combine. Like I can remember watching like Calvin Johnson, like Walter Jones in the combine and being like blown away from Calvin Johnson being so big and running the 40 that he did, and Walter Jones being as big as he did, jumping 40-something inches for the vertical. So I was really just like kind of obsessed with the game at a young age. I don't know.
Who was your favorite player growing up?
My favorite player growing up, probably growing up was Terrell Owens at the
Theo.
time, and then he became an Eagle, which was huge for me. And then for me, after I got a little older, I started just really falling in love with offensive linemen. And then I kind of transitioned to like Walter Jones. I had a time period with Brett Favre for a little bit. And honestly, right now, my favorite would probably be Trent Williams. I think that's the best offensive tackle to play the game. What he does now at the age he does it, how long he's been doing it, is something we'll probably never see again.
Yeah, Trent Williams is a savage.
Yeah.
And then after IUP, you landed down in Pittsburgh. Tell us a little bit about your journey down here to the Burgh.
All right, so I was one of those kids, like a lot of players. You think you have the opportunity to play in the NFL, whatever the opportunity was. Going into my senior year, I was ranked the 6th small school guard in the country. So, which, in my opinion, what I think that was I was going to get an opportunity to camp somewhere. I was told the Eagles or the Saints would be willing to invite me to camp, see what I do. I think at best I would have ended up being a camp body for a couple weeks, possibly practice team. Just when I look at the height side, I have a respect for the game. So I'm not one of those cats that like, I had a very celebrated college career, but I'm not like, I'd be in the league if it wasn't for this. It was about 5 or 6 days in the camp, my senior year, I tore my hip labrum. Never forget it, running outside zone, backside. I get pushed in the hip, kind of overextend my hip, hit the ground. Thought I had a hernia for a couple weeks. I had to sit the first 4 weeks out of practice, just played games. And that, I can remember going, Frank Trainey was there when you were there. I can remember in his office, somebody asked me about playing in the NFL. And I gave the answer that every my college because, I'm gonna go over the surgery, I'm gonna come back. And I can remember Frank grabbed me. And it's deep now that he said this to me, especially after kids. He grabbed me in his office, he was like, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the surgery. Like, I don't think you really understand the severity of it. And he was like, you continue to play football or you don't. He said, but one, you'll tell your kids how to play the game or you'll get to show them how to play the game. And I kind of understood what he meant by that. You know what I mean? Like, I had a injury that was, at the time, and still to this day, is kind of severe that a lot of guys, through the rehabilitation process, like it messes up your walk, messes up your gait, stuff like that. I'm in the fitness field, so being able to move is just a big deal for me.
Would you say that's a big reason why you're so into mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, the biggest thing it did for me, one of the biggest things it did for me is it made me just focus on education a lot more. When I got to college, I was a lot more involved in my education, studying. And I really love what I did. And I think that's the big thing for kids sometimes. Like, we go through high school, we don't really like what we're learning. I started to love what I was learning. So for me, education was easy. That's why I decided to take my master's degree. So I got my master's degree from IUP in sports science, learning sports psychology, sports economics, and everything that kind of surrounds sports. Then I finished, so when I graduated my undergrad, December 2013, I finished my, undergrad was December 2013. I finished my master's in December of 15, May of 15. I went home for a little bit in between. I had an internship that I did actually with the arena football team that I play with. I went home for a little bit, tried to get a job. I remember they called. It was the best job around the area I was going to get back home in Reading. I didn't really want to be in Reading, but it was a good opportunity to make some money. It wasn't in the field or anything like that. I remember getting that phone call telling me I didn't get the job. Got everybody I was excited for. My mom, called my mom, told her, I'll never forget her saying to me, she was like, it just wasn't meant for you. Like, God got a bigger plan for you. And like at the time as a kid, like 20-something years old, you don't really understand that. It was around New Year's, I came out to Pittsburgh to visit a girlfriend I had at the time. I'm at a buddy's house, I'll never forget this. I'm at a buddy's house, we're watching a playoff game. And he asked me that night, like, if you could go back and play, like, if you could play any aspect, would you play? I'm like, yeah, outside my hip, absolutely. Like, if it made sense, I would. I got a phone call that night. Like, I'm not lying. I had a phone call that night, and I pick up the phone. And this is like before spam was a big thing. So you get a phone call number and pick it up. I pick up the phone, and the guy says, do you still have the itch to play? And I'm like, yeah, why, what's up? He said, what would it take for you to play? I said, a paycheck and housing. He's like, all right, I got a couple opportunities for you to play in arena football if you're interested. I'm gonna be called next week. So I'm like, all right. And it was weird, I hung up the phone, I'm looking at my friend, he's like, what? I'm like, I told him what happened. Like, are you involved in this? Like, I swear. Like, we just had a conversation. Like, it ain't no big deal. So a couple weeks later, I got invited to San Andreas to play for the Sharks. It was a tryout I had to go to. The issue with that at the time, it was like last minute flight to California. I'm a broke post college grad. I didn't have $2,400 to get myself down there, and if I got cut, bring myself back. So we denied that opportunity. I'm looking for work again, and then the Erie Explosion called me. They're an arena team based out of Erie. I think it was like the PFL or PIFL or some league of that sort. So for me, I was always a big advocate of using football as a tool. And I think when I was in college, I was getting over the fact that this was the end of how I was using that tool. I then looked at it like Erie is an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Pittsburgh in comparison to Reading. So while I'm at Erie, I can make drives down. When I can go see my girlfriend at the time, I can find housing, I can find a job. So from that, I just made it that way. So I went out to Erie to play football. And that was, college was business, but it was a lot of fun. That was the only time I could say where football was strictly business for me. Like, I can remember walking into camp, I didn't really make no friends, I didn't really talk to nobody. I didn't want to get close with anybody, because for me, it was just like, they brought in like 60, 70 dudes, and only like 20 of us were gonna make the team. So for me, I was like, nah, man, like, you guys are adversaries at the end of the day. Like, until they make that final cut, like, friendships and stuff are gone. We're in week 2. I got the starting tight end position, so there's only 3 linemen in arena football. You have the tight end, center, and guard. I'm at the starting tight end position at the time. We have like another week, last week of camp. Quarterback throws a dart in practice. I'm excited, like that's the way I played. I'm hyped, I'm celebrating. I went to go hip bump the quarterback. He missed me, I rolled my ankle, sprained my ankle. So like there, I think my days in the area are done at the time. I go, they tell me I have a whatever grade sprain, tell me it's like 6 weeks to come back. Coach texted me 2 days later and said, when are you coming back? And I just texted him 2 days, I Googled the day before our first game, texted him 2 days before, I said, I'll be clear by this time. They was like, all right, cool. We had cuts that weekend, and I'll never forget, looking at the list, it was like old high school basketball style. Like, go to look at the list, and my name's on the list to make the team. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, I'm just like blown away, kind of, because like I didn't practice the last 4 days. I got an injury at the time that I'm nursing at the time. And the guard, the tight end that they cut, I'm on crutches. The tight end that they cut is like freaking out, leaving the door. I'm like, I can't believe they cut me. We got dudes who can't even play, yada yada. Long story short, I just thugged out the injury, went out and played, super taped my ankle up, played 10 games for the Erie Explosion. In my time there, like I said, my left guard was actually my son's godfather, had called me in like week 5 or 6 and was like, hey, look, dude, I got a spot out here in Pittsburgh, moved to, rent is cheap. I need a roommate. I really wouldn't want to live anywhere with anyone but you. So I went out to check him out, and he had this really sweet spot on the south side with a sweet view of the city. So I signed a lease that day. Didn't know if I had the money or not. Just told myself I'll figure it out. Finished my time up in Erie. I was playing for Erie Explosion, and I worked at Cricket Wireless. I got transferred down to Pittsburgh. Cricket Wireless. Shoot, I might have lasted a month and a half at Cricket Wireless. Something funny in my check, and I'm a big person about money, so I just quit like that day. I got another job working in mental health for my roommate at the time, and I did that until I found a job in fitness. First job in fitness I had was out in Wexford. We had a power train up there, which is now Pure Edge. Pure Edge is the performance gym, but in the Pure Athletics gym. So I worked there for a little less than a year. I came in November. I got laid off in July. Just couldn't get the place up and running to how they wanted it. I ended up working for the gentleman who kind of like bought all the equipment in the space at Pure Edge. They're still up there in the Wexford area, does really good training. That's my first high school coaching opportunity too. Funny story so my first coaching opportunity was at Pine Richland. And we needed to find ways to just like get in contact.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. We need to find ways to get in contact with coaches about like training their kids. And I'm just at the time especially, I'm gonna just pull up on it. So I'll never forget, I just pulled up practice, Casper over, just sitting there like staring at me from a distance. So I let them practice or whatever. After I go holler, I'm like, hey, listen, my name is so-and-so. Like I train at this place, we love to train our kids, we love the season, X, Y, Z. That was what filtered COVID's, I think, junior year. And he was like, listen, I got this camp for you. If you want to try, come out here and work this camp for us, and we'll see what happens from there. And at the time, I'm thinking like I'm gonna get a couple leads from it. So he invites me to the Eric Kasparovich camp out in Klein, which was an awesome camp. I know he's at Mars right now. He probably does the same thing. Probably one of the best youth camps I've ever worked at. I'll never forget this. So it was a 3-day camp. The last day of camp, and Nico actually was one of the kids. The last day of camp, he comes, the kids come up to me and like, I hear you're coaching for us. I hear you're coaching. I hear you're coaching. I'm like, I'm doing what? And I can see him like a couple of yards away, like kind of chuckling. And I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like I didn't want to disappoint the kids, like 5th and 6th grade running around. Camp ends. I go up to him to say bye, and he goes, I hear you're coaching for us this year. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. Let's see what we can do. You know what I mean? I really wanted to get into coaching too, and I think he noticed it just seeing me coach. And like, I'm forever grateful for Eric for that. Like, I think he just like threw me in a position like where it's hard for me to say no. I didn't say no. And then I talked to my boss. He had thought that like we were gonna get big leads from it. So he was like, here, look, we'll manipulate your schedule. You can work here in the morning. You can go coach there in the afternoon. So I got to coach Pine Ridge in 8th grade. So I had some really good ball players on my team too. I had Eli Yoakum was on that team. Miguel Jackson was on that team. Day was on that team. I had Harrison Hayes on that team.
Luke Miller was on that team?
Really good. One more time?
Luke Miller?
Luke Miller was on that team.
Yeah. He just had 15 tackles this week for Duquesne.
Yeah, I know. I seen him this past summer, man. He looks good. We had a really good squad that year. We ended up winning all but one game. We shut out all these teams. And I knew that team. I knew that team was going to be a state championship team then. So from there, like I said, the season ended. Things weren't working out for me too much. I had a buddy from home who was a manager at LA Fitness, asked if I wanted a job at LA Fitness. So I transferred down to LA Fitness. I ended up quitting that job at Pure Athletics. Of course, I couldn't coach at Pine Ridge anymore because the LA Fitness I worked at was out in Bakery Square. I started in sales in LA Fitness. I hated sales. Some crazy situation happened where a trainer got a lady hurt and needed a trainer. They seen everything I knew in training, so they transferred me over to training then. One client that I had was Luke Harris, was one of my clients when he was like 7th or 8th grade at Seneca Valley. I'm training at LA Fitness. I started in January, probably like March, April. Luke Harris' dad calls me and he's like, hey, would you have any interest in being a strength coach at Central Catholic? I'm still like a year and a half into Pittsburgh. I really don't. I know of Central Catholic. I don't know where it's at. I don't know anything about the spot. And I'm driving home while he's on the phone with me to the south side from Bakery Square. And I'm like, where's that? He's like, it's on 5th Ave. I'm like, I'm on 5th Ave. And he's like, it looks like this big castle. And I'm at that stoplight in front of Central Catholic looking at the building like, oh, wow, yeah. I was like, well, let's see. They offered me a volunteer position first. I couldn't do it. I was trying to get my books in order first. And then Terry Totten and Coach Campy had a really good relationship. Camp knew I was training out there. So Campy had called me about like May or so and said that Terry had a paid position for me to be the freshman coach out there. So I started being a freshman coach with Coach Bob O'Neill. That's around the time I met you. I think you were a sophomore.
Yeah, that was my sophomore year.
First I got there. Something happened with the strength coach like week 3 or 4. And then Terry called me and was like, hey, listen, we need a strength coach. Got a couple more bucks for you for clients if you go open your schedule up. And I can remember we had a bad game against Butler or something like that? He brought me in that Saturday morning. And I can remember just wearing you guys out that Saturday morning. And me and him were just like hollering, getting after dudes. And that's like with like Troy Fisher, D Green's on that team, Brian Giles was on that team, Corey Thomas, and that was a hell of a talented team.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I didn't even play a single snap and I was having to do the workout.
Yeah, I was rough. Because for me, I looked at like this was like my tryout. Like if I wanted to impress this coach and coach, like I heard so many good things about Central, like just even calling back home, my coach was like, what do you guys know about Central Catholic? Like, again, I heard of them, but I wasn't too familiar. They were like, dude, that's like the mecca of football out there. Like, there isn't a better strength group I can get out there. So for me, that was like really like my tryout. Like, that's one of the few times where like I took everything I knew about strength conditioning, I just threw out the window and I just wanted to wear kids out. I was like, yo, if I could show this coach that, and I'll never forget we get done. He was like, yo, you're going to be really good here. And from there, that's when I started Central. That's when I ended up meeting you. And by then, my books got really good at LA Fitness. I kind of like dug my feet into Pittsburgh. Was real successful at training. And I'm forever grateful to Terry Totten for what I learned. I learned so much about just coaching because the way my schedule worked, I was able to get out of work. The way training works is like you usually work 5 to 9 on one side of the clock or the other, whereas the morning or the afternoon. The hardest time to get is like between 10 a.m. to like 1 to 2 o'clock. So I had a couple clients there at the time. They were all willing to move. Some of them were Central Catholic alums, so they were just happy to get out the way for me to be able to go down there. So I got to go down a little bit before school started, probably like 1, 2 o'clock, and I got to just sit there and learn from Terry for like, I think I might have done my first 4 years there. And every day, too, like 200, I was with that dude 265 days a year, meeting all the college coaches, seeing how he handles recruiting, seeing how he just organizes like the politics to football, and like, I'm forever grateful for that dude, for everything I have to sit there and just soak up, man. There'd be times where we're just sitting there and he's just drawing on the board, and the way he does defensive schemes and the way I like to run the ball and stuff like that. So I did that the first year. The second year, he had asked me to help with the offensive line with Coach Byron. And I love Coach Byron because he kind of let me just like take the reins. Like he noticed how much offensive line play has changed from when he played to where we were at the time, and how much it could have just like I was able to help, and he kind of just let me grow from there. Even then, we had a really good offensive line all those years I was there. And Coach Cotton let me start in January, so I got to do some like advanced stuff. Like you could ask those guys. Like I taught guys how to point out mics, how to switch the mic. We could have all out of plays. I mean, we probably ran like 8 to 7 different run plays in that 2019 year when I was there, and that was just because he trusted me to do so and had the time to do so, man. So I'm forever grateful for that Central Catholic and my experience there. And then, yeah, I think from there.
Hey, I might put you on the spot real quick with this one. You know, Central's got a lot of great O linemen. Who are some of the best O linemen that you coached when you were up there?
Tommy Hartnett, gotta be one of the best I can think of. One, he was a freak athlete for his size, 6'4", 315, and he had a really cool story coming through, in my opinion, because he wasn't the most invested in football, and it just like clicked for him one day, and he was like, in my opinion, like one of the best players on our team. And I'll never forget this. Michigan comes in, recruiting Tommy Hartnett, and they offer him a scholarship, and I'm sitting there like mind blown, like. And as me as a coach, like, you really celebrate when your players win. So for me, that was like the biggest win, even to this day, I probably would have had as a coach. And he says, no, I'm committing to Dartmouth on Thursday. And I'll never forget how long I tried to just talk him out of that. Like, dude, what are you talking? Michigan, like, you go to the NFL for Michigan, like this and that. And then we had that first game, I think it was Cathedral Prep that year. Nah, it was Cathedral Prep or that York team we played. His mom comes up to me like in tears. And we like blew the team out, so like, I didn't know if the journal from the game. I didn't know why she was crying. She was in tears. She gave me this big hug, and she said, Tommy wanted to go to Dartmouth. He was 5 years old. And I was just like, well, he made the right decision. And from then on, I never said, not only to him, but to any player who's made a decision, I've never said anything about the decision they made. But that year, that 2019 year, we had a really special team. We had Tommy Hartnett, Matt Olfman, who's at Pitt right now, did really well. Liam Kearney was one of the most versatile linemen I've ever had, one of the smartest dudes I've ever had. Like, he could play all 5 positions through a game, and he would still have the least mental errors. And I think that's special, to be able to move from left tackle to right guard to center. Like, if somebody went down and somebody needed to blow, like, the person we moved was Liam. The Twins were freak. They're two of the most freakish linemen, offensively or defensively, I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was actually with them earlier today.
One more time?
I was actually with them earlier today.
Yeah, those are two of the freakish linemen I've ever got the opportunity to coach. We had Elliot Donald was on that team. Funny thing with him, like I've never met a high schooler who was like, the way he handled everything was just like very like professional, and he was like very like adamant about it. Like he had like the dog mentality that people talk about. Like I can remember sophomore year, freshman year, he's like getting dragged all that practice. He's young though. He might be like 200 pounds, 190 pounds. And he just gets up and is like in everybody's face, doesn't care. Like he get pancaked, he's back up. Like, oh, what's up? Dog, knock, go, dog. And like, I've never heard a player say so many times trying to do another rep. No, go again. No, do that again. No, do that again. But like, it created a dog that like, I don't know, like he was a special player. I mean, that was a very special player there. AJ Beatty was a freak talent there. Matt Alcino was really good. I think a couple years after you came through, he's at Albany right now. So I mean, I got to coach some really special players there, and they even have special ones now. I think so. Like I said, like as a coach, that's what you want. Like you want to coach the best, and I think, I think it's very important. I think to work your way towards it. I think I was kind of given that opportunity very young in my career, and I was very fortunate and blessed to do so. I'm very happy about the way I handled the situation. I think I handled it well. I think the guys all did really well. But it was good. It was good. Like I'll probably never have an offensive line. When I come back to high school coaching, I'll be blessed if I ever have an offensive line like that. I mean, we're talking about Brayden Henderson was off the bench. Donovan Hines coming off the bench. You know what I mean? So like,
those guys are balling in college right now.
Yeah, I mean, Donovan Hines had 2 sacks for Notre Dame last week.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. I remember Donovan was the kid where like we throw him in the game, knowing he could do something. Somebody need to blow. He'd jump off sides, we pull him out the rest of the game. You know what I mean? Like that's how he started. And then his junior year, he comes to that place. And again, he's one of the strongest kids I think I've ever coached. I mean, I watched him pick a player up over his head, and we blew the whistle. He just dropped it and walked away like it was nothing. You know what I mean? Like he was so. I mean, that school, really special kids go to that place, man. It's a really cool job. I'm very excited for the coaches that are there. Coach Laymeyer, like he's a good dude. I met him actually when I was at Pine Ridge, and he was really good to me over there, kind of just like showing me the ropes a little bit of Pine Ridge. So I'll never forget that. So I mean, that place is awesome. And hopefully my boys, I mean, if we're lucky, we're still around the area. That's where I hope that's send them.
And coaching in the Whippeal and playing up over in the Reading area, how would you say the competition and the talent compares?
It's not even close. Not even close. I talk about that all the time. Like there is, you know, in that at the time it was the IC. I think they're now the Lynx or Lebanon League. If you had a Division 1 dude or 2, you were the best team in conference. The Wilson Bulldogs from West Lawn typically had a guy or 2. I have a cousin who played for them, and they were always just trouncing everybody. I played a little bit after the days when Reading High was really good. They had James Bryant, Sam Bryant over there, a couple other dudes who made some big names for themselves. Governor Mifflin did pretty decent all the time. They'd have Division 1 cats every once in a while where Nick Singleton from Penn State was from. But the competition wasn't really close. Like I tell my friends back home all the time, like there'll be one Division 1 kid out there, and those games will be packed because everybody wants to see what that looks like against the competition. If you have only one Division 1 kid in the Whippeal, you're probably not a favorite to even make the playoffs.
Yeah, probably not.
Not. I mean, so it's very different. It's more of a basketball scene. Philly being so close, New York, New Jersey, DC, Baltimore, really good basketball talent out there. I always talk about how like the games. You guys have football games here that unpack the stands. We do it with basketball over there. It's like you'll go to a basketball game that's sold out just because Reading High is coming into town to play so and so. Especially the days when Lonnie Walker was there. So real, what you would tell them. Especially when the days when Lonnie Walker was over there. Really big basketball area. Every once in a while we get a couple stars that come out of the Reading area. I pay attention to a lot of them. There's left tackle right now at Penn State, Javen Williams. Nick Singleton's another one. There's another kid coming out that I just heard about when I was home. I can't think of his name right now, but I believe he's a Penn State commit. Javen also has a little brother that's pretty good. So we get a couple every once in a while, but here it's really like, it's a culture here. Like football is, here you go, my boy. Football is like really a culture, and that's what I loved about. That's the big reason why I stayed here and loved it here. I can actually remember in high school, after I committed to IUP, I had a teacher come to me and say, "Oh, you ain't gonna be able to handle those Whippeal kids out there." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And me, like, I was a cocky high school. I'm like, "What Whippeal? I ain't worried about none of that." And then when I went to IUP, to see how many people knew each other, but to see how good the ball players were from these schools that I've never heard of. You know what I mean? The East Sports, the Gateways, the Southport, just random schools too sometimes. So I mean, it's really a big football culture here, which I love. This football was my first love. It's very different, man. It's very different. Basketball, I think, is a little different. I think basketball's growing in Pittsburgh, but I think we got basketball unlocked as far as east side of the state compared to west side of the state.
Yeah, I think y'all do got basketball unlocked. And you do got your youngest right there with you. Your oldest just had his first day of preschool, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so how's it been adjusting to fatherhood?
It's been awesome, honestly. It is, and Coach Campy, I take this quote from Coach Campy and told me, it is the most rewarding thing you can do as long as you embrace it. And I've done everything I can to do that. That's a big reason why I stopped coaching, to be able to spend more time with my kids. I'm very fortunate to that I make my own schedule. So honestly, my work schedule works around my kids. I mean, I love it. And honestly, it's one of those things that when I had kids, I think sometimes in life as you grow as a man, you don't know why, like God put certain things in front of you. And I realized like football was here for me, for my kids. Like I coached to learn to do for my kids. I used to talk to a parent all the time and just say like, I used to joke about coaching their kid, like this is just reps for when I have kids. And I coached way before I had kids. So I mean, it's been super dope. It's also one of those things where like I used to talk a lot about how much I don't care about football. I really just like helping youth, and that's what we prepare them for. Like we prepare you guys for fatherhood because 90+% of you guys are gonna be fathers one day. Whether you guys play football anymore or not after high school, whether you guys get the job or do this or do that, 97% of you guys are gonna be fathers one day. So like all of those things that we instill, the responsibility to take accountability, just all the little stuff that coaches just jump on top of you guys about, like that's really what it's about. And you don't really understand it until you have a child of your own. And you see like, dang, and that's why coaches act like that about me. Like, dang, that's why I can't be late all the time. Like that's why when I mess up, I gotta make up for it. Because when you're a dad, like it's the same thing. And then even just being an offensive lineman, like I think that position in all of sports is probably the closest to fatherhood. Because like you don't get the recognition, you're expected to do above and beyond, and that's just like the expectation. Like there's nothing else to it. We're not making no excuses about it. Sometimes you gotta get your hands dirty. Sometimes it's, you know, this is that. So I mean, the experience has been awesome. Like it's something I wouldn't give up for the world, man. Like it's cool now because I get to see like it don't seem like that, but I've been coaching so long that kids I've coached are starting to have kids now. So like, and I guess I have my kid later, they had their kid early, whatever it was, and maybe I should coach them all, but like, it's just cool to see, and I'm so happy for my friends even when they have kids, because like, I know how that changes you. It's a lot of work, yeah, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like hands down, every day is like a battle sometimes to get through it, but it's also just the most rewarding, like, just seeing them pick up stuff, like learn stuff every day, like my youngest, he'll start gymnastics next week, you know what I mean? See him be able to thrive through that. My oldest has been in gymnastics for 2 years now. He'll start jiu-jitsu in the spring or the summer. So just to see, I mean, even him in school, like overall. One more time.
You gonna have them playing O-line as well?
Whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this one's gonna be my O-lineman. He's very aggressive. Sounds crazy talking about a 1-year-old like this, but he's a very strong 1-year-old. Like my other son was pretty strong. He's a lot stronger than he was at this age. I think both of them will love football. My brother-in-law actually plays for Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so they get to go to. They've been to more NFL games than I was at before I turned like 20-something odd years old. So they've been to games. They love the atmosphere. They love the game. I keep them around the game. So like when people see me, like I say it all the time. If my kids ain't allowed to go, I probably ain't. You know what I mean? Like when you see me, you'll see my kids. You'll see them down at 210. They've been to 7-on-7. On weekends, I take them to little league games so they can play free for all with the kids, just be around the game. So I think they'll like the game of football. I think if one of them, my offensive line, will be this one. The other one, he might work his way out the box. Might end up being like a tight end or linebacker or something. I don't think it's gonna be a skill position. He's gonna be a little big. But my kids are gonna know how to block. I'll say that. No matter what, because you got to block, you got to tackle football. No matter what you play, so they're gonna know how to do those two things.
And stepping away from a high school staff and doing more personalized O-line training, being down at 210s, things like that, would you say more one-on-one focused is something that you also enjoy?
Yeah, I always do the one-on-one thing. I think the one thing when you're on a staff is it creates a little bit of a conflict of interest. Especially when I was at Central, I don't think too many people were willing to work with me because Central has this stigma of recruiting. And I say this, like, they don't recruit, they include. Like, if you want good football, you want to practice well, you want to see if you're one of the best around Pittsburgh Central Catholic's not a bad place to go to find that out. So I think my business struggled a little bit there, and I worked mainly with adults at that time and kind of subsidized it with my training at Central. I do think that me getting out of Central was necessary for my career, though. And at the time, it was kind of hard. I left around the time when Coach Todd was getting up out of there. And maybe I could have had the opportunity, but I didn't even try. I think I kind of just needed to move on at the time. D. Brown has been very receptive to me, and I kind of just built a relationship with him over the years because when I was at Central during the winter months, I used to try to push you guys to go down there because we couldn't really run. Yeah. And I understand how important it is to be sprinting and moving during all the winter months. I can't just lift you guys from January till we can get outside, May, April, you know what I mean, time. So I used to drop cats off down there. So we've always had a decent relationship, and we actually built a relationship. It was that summer, my last summer there, some guy on social media was like, I don't know, like clowning what AD was doing with a ladder drill or something. I thought it was weird. So I was like commenting on it. So D. Brown had reached out to me. And we just started talking about it, and I just talked about how like it is football specific. Maybe you don't see it. Maybe this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. Also, it's 15 seconds of a 2-hour session with Aaron Donald. You can't tell me that him with a ladder doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It was just weird.
Yeah.
So that's how our relationship really grew. And then my last year there at Central, he was just a guy I ended up speaking to. Like, I mean, even still to this day, every 2-3 days, I'm on the phone with him for probably like good 20-30 minutes, just talking about the kids, trying to help out, trying to do this, new ideas down there. And then when I decided to step away from Central, I just remember calling him like, wow, what do you need? Like, how can I help? I just want to come down and help. So that was that very next winter was my first time going down there. And I just loved it. Like, just the atmosphere down there. Like, you got 150, 200 kids that just want to be good, and they get to compete against each other. And it's another environment where, like, if you think you're one of the best in Pittsburgh, it's a place where you can go to find out. You kind of like find out where you fit on the totem pole as far as like talent in football. And it's also just the way we do it. It's so advantageous for the kids. Like, Coach Todd says to me all the time. He said the scariest time for me during the week is Thursday after they leave until Monday when school starts, because like kids at that age, you know, like, you're just like, idle time is the devil's work. You know what I mean? Like, you guys just have too much free time sometimes. Some people don't believe in that for high school, but I do think there's such thing as too much free time. So even the time we start, like, the most dangerous time for high school is between 6 and midnight, 6 p.m. and midnight. So we start at 7 o'clock. So around 6 o'clock, you'll be thinking about getting down there. We wear you out. I mean, you know, the workouts ain't no joke. You're leaving there by 9 o'clock. By the time you get home, you get showered. It's about 10 o'clock. You're too tired to go do anything, and you got school in the morning. So I just think it's a great violence prevention method, as far as well as just like training kids and helping them do better. And then he has the numbers. I mean, you see how many cats went to college through there, 40 plus pros.
Yeah, are playing in the pros, have good jobs. Like, it's just a
I mean, it's huge, man. It's cool how many people come back. And I tell him all the time, like, Reading's a rough neighborhood, and it would have done so much for me and my friends to have something like that. Like, to get a trainer, I had to drive an hour to Allentown twice a week to train somebody. You know what I mean? Like, performance training wasn't such a big deal back then in my days. So to be able to pull in 150, 200 kids a night, I mean, we trained over 1,200 kids this past off season. At least once, you know what I mean? That came down at least once, showed their face, X, Y, Z. So like, I just think that concept is so cool. And like, so I'm there. I told D Brown, like, I need you to keep that place open for another 20-something odd years. You know what I mean? I need my boys to go through there. Where I was actually talking, I think I'm gonna start Byron this spring. It's just, I mean, it ain't for him to go down there and compete, just learn how to move his feet. There's other kids down there from the ages of 5. I mean, we have kids from ages 5 to 22 down there. So for me, that's been like, I fell in love with that place. And then D Brown's another person I'm just like very grateful for in my life to just help me kind of move forward. And then just talking to him one day, he kind of was just like, and I had said it too, like, what old linemen do you have? And he was like, dude, we don't get a lot down here. And I'm just like, all right, I got something for you guys. First year, I kind of went in, just kind of learned the ropes. Last year was my second year. I started a little bit in a couple classes, kind of towards the end of the spring, going into the summer. Summer, I kind of started to take off a little bit more with the classes that I was doing up at Shenley or just out somewhere, a lot of just one-on-one training as well. And one thing I learned is, like, and no fault to the coach, our knowledge for offensive line play isn't where Pittsburgh deserves. And some people aren't going to like that I say that, but I listen to the things the kids are learning, and I don't think it's advantageous for them to play college football. And we have so many kids that have the size, like, they're the 6'5", 280s, and the 6'4", 300s, that, like, and they're strong, and they're powerful, and they have everything that the offensive lineman needs. They just don't know how to play the position efficiently.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is because around the area, I feel like linemen don't really get the respect they honestly deserve, kind of, or the shine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and what
but I mean, that ain't just a Pittsburgh thing. That's just a football thing, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And one person I love right now is Duke Manyweather. I think he's doing a lot for offensive linemen and making it just like cool. One thing I explain to people, like, if your kid's 6'5" plus, there's a lot of scholarships for him to play offensive lineman. Like, who has the most scholarships on the team? Our linemen. Like, offensive, defensively, it's usually offensive linemen have the most scholarships locked up on the team. Because you need guys. You need 7 or 8 dudes per week who can play in case something happens, in case somebody goes down. Just an extra body for field goal. Like, you know what I mean? You need to be developing somebody. Like, there's so much to it. And I think because it's not popular is why people don't jump into it. Like, DB is a popular position. Quarterback's a popular position. There's going to be defensive backs and running back coaches and wide receiver gurus for Pittsburgh until the end of time. But I just think, and it surprised me too, because there's so many good offensive linemen that came from Pittsburgh. Like Joe Moore coached here, and to think that like it's kind of slowed down. And even in my time with Coach Totten, coaches came in and just said like Pittsburgh's not really the place for offensive linemen like it used to be. So I'm really just doing everything I can to bring it back. And whether it's training the kids myself or just like even talking to coaches to give tips, like you can ask around. Like I go to a lot of coaches' practices, like they have questions, and I give them the information because I want to see the position just grow as a whole, and just how much like these teams change when your offensive line is good. Like the one thing I can say I did for Central, like Coach Ball was a really good coach. I was really good at making sure we didn't have mental errors, and that's one thing I learned from Coach Campus. The team with the least mental errors in the line is probably going to win the game. And that's a big reason why we won games. Not only did we have like awesome dudes who play the position, but we made very few mental errors. We counted them, we went over them, extensive film sessions. So like that's one of the things I do in my services as well, is just like teaching guys how to play the game, how to count the box. And because it has to grow. Like when that happens and you're a 6'4" kid who can play and understand the position and understand footwork and understand pass rush, like these days the pass rush are dead, and I'm frustrated. And every coach can say whatever you want about me. This is done. If you're doing this, your kids are not good offensive linemen. It takes a hand swipe and it's over. So you have to learn how to use your hands independently. You gotta learn how to move your feet, how to use different sets. Like there's so much more to the game at offensive line play that people know, and like I just want to share that. And not to say that like I know the perfect way, but I understand offensive line play from a biomechanical standpoint because I train. Like, what position are you strong in? What position can you move fast from? Like, that's the way I go. I also understand that not every kid is the same. So, like, their strengths are different. The way they're going to play the position is different. Even the way your playbook is going to be different. Like, the way that you do everything depends on the style of offense that you run. So, I've learned all that. I've been blessed to go down to, all right, you bump your head. I've been blessed to go down to O-Line Mastermind last year and learn from Duke, and just the different things that he does and it applies to all from the high school level up. One thing I'm working on right now for myself is getting better with the younger kids. So whether it be like middle school, 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade. Yesterday I had like 3 10-year-olds, just teaching them stance, teaching them first step, teaching them hand placement. I think that helps me as a coach for the older guys. Because I think I'm so used to talking to older high school kids. Like that's like my sweet spot. That like 14 to 18-year-old. So to break it down for a 10-year-old, and just like the little tricks and tips that I have to do to be able to get them to understand hand placement, to understand footwork. So I mean that's kind of my whole thing with just the whole O-line development thing. Like I want to see it grow as a whole. Look, any coaches out there that want to holler at me about offensive line play, I'm glad to help. Get my phone, anything on social media. I'm glad to talk O-line play because like it needs to grow in Pittsburgh. And I mean, I said this to D Brown, like 9 to 22 people on the field are linemen. You know what I mean? Like we need to make sure that we open up services for them and create that better structure. Like, you know, you got 40 dudes, you said 40 plus dudes you have to send to the NFL, but if you develop linemen more, what's that number look like? So that's kind of my whole skill with linemen, kind of why I do that.
And you can still have a good squad and have like a soft spot on your offense or defense, but the soft spot cannot be on the line. Like it's just so obvious, especially like I'm trying to think like a relevant one right now is Colorado.
Yeah, and I think they're struggling right now with the offensive line. I think there's also teams out there like if you have 5 dog offense, Division I solidified Power 4 offensive linemen, you can win a state championship with just about anybody. You can win a state championship with just about anybody. If they don't make mistakes, they know how to block up front, especially at the high school level, because like we celebrate the skill guys so much, but them dudes ain't hopping the box. Like at the end of the day, they're not. Like there's very few cats out there who are the number 1 or 2 or top 10 kid in the Whitfield who don't play lineman, who will step in the box and make a tackle against a 300-pounder with bad intentions. And I'm very adamant about that. When you look at especially 6A, like St. Joe's Prep, their line is awesome. Emotep, every year, their line is awesome on both sides of the ball. St. Francis, they were just here a couple weeks ago. Their line was awesome. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you talk about winning a state championship, I think that's a big piece that goes missed. And even when you talk about, like, if you take, especially a single A or double A school, if you go to a single A or double A school, you got 5 offensive linemen that are going to play in college, period. You're in state championship.
Yeah, you're a state champion. I think when I went down to Avonworth, we had 3 linemen that played on in college, and we had the best offensive line out of anybody we played by far.
Yeah. I think Avonworth, I never got a chance to meet him, but from looking at the offensive linemen through the past years, I've just been like shouting out offensive linemen, checking them out. They have a great offensive line coach. And that's another thing too. I can watch your film and tell people don't like that. I said, I can watch your film and tell how good your coach is, like coaching guys. Like how good are you? Dang, bro. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, but shout out Coach Lance. Coach Lance from Adamworth, that's my guy. And he's also my mechanic, real dude.
Yeah, dude, I mean, he's awesome. And you can tell by how well the five of those guys step together, what the double teams look like. And I see that from watching guys' films. Like, it's not just about you sometimes. Like, you can look to left guard, right guard, and see, like, that's why that center's successful. And even that, like, I was very fortunate to have the career I had at IUP because I played with linemen. Like, I played with 4 All-American linemen, being one of them in my time there. And just learning how they did it. Having one next to me. Like, I played with an All-American guard, and that makes double teams easier. Having smart centers, like a center that knows that we're all going to get the job done and tells us the right thing to do, like, that's so imperative. And our time at IUP, like, we were successful because of that. Like, Coach Camp is, to me, the GOAT at that place because he's had so many successful offensive linemen because it's the way he does it, the way he teaches them to step together, the way he just teaches us to be together. Like, me and Nick were roommates for like 10 years after college. We used to think it was like the funniest thing in the world. Even when my son was first born, like, we just moved out from each other probably like 3 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Even my son was first born. So, I mean, it's so important for offensive linemen to be tight, to step together, to be together, to do stuff together. Like, it's such a part of the game that I don't want to say we're losing it. I just don't think it gets the attention that it needs to. And I think it's because we play such a passing game right now. But even pass blocking, like, defensive linemen have changed so much since the days even that I played. Like, that skinny DN who ran really fast, there was very few of them out there when I played the game. Very few. So, like, that's different. There's dudes running 4.6s off the edge now. Like, I see a statistic that Myles Garrett can get a hand on the quarterback even if you block him right in 2.5 seconds. Like, what do you, without, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do about that? Like, you have to find a different way to do it. And, like, I thought this was funny. When I was in Erie, the pocket's 2.5 seconds. So I used to do all type of, like, unorthodox stuff to block people. I used to, like, set up and cut people. Like, I used to start run blocking them just to get them to, like, run with me and then sit back and run block and, like, pass block. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do when you learn the basics offensive line to help you out. And, like, that's kind of what my classes are about, just, like, teaching the kids, like, what do you have in your toolbox that can help you out?
Speaking of Pittsburgh, have you maybe adapted a little bit, becoming a little bit of a Steelers fan, Penguins fan, Pirates fan, or not even, just Central?
I root for the Steelers against 30 teams in the NFL. I'll say that. Only team I don't root against is the Eagles. Everybody else, I hope the Steelers win. I go to Steelers games, like, we got a couple on the calendar that we're going to this year.
Yeah, I seen them. You wear the Birds jersey to the game.
Yeah, I do every time. With a terrible towel in my back pocket though. That's my peace flag.
Heard that. You got a favorite food spot in the area?
A favorite food spot right now, honestly, because it's on my mind. Grandma B's in the Hill is fire. I just had that a couple weeks ago. Great breakfast spot out in the Hill. But outside of there,
what you get there? You get the breakfast fries, or what you go for? I get the breakfast fries. That's what you gotta get, bro. Loaded breakfast fries.
I did get the breakfast fries. I was with Lonzo. He got the breakfast fries, so I tried. They were good. I kept it basic: eggs, bacon, stuff like that. But it was fire though. It was so fire.
Can you cook?
The thing I like about Pittsburgh is a lot of like mom and pop restaurants that are really good. So I appreciate that. I think out my way. I mean, we got a lot of Spanish food that are like that, but like out here, that's the one thing I think Pittsburgh is not a little bit, a little more Latino into it.
And can you cook yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like my next move. I got everything prepared upstairs. As soon as we get off, I'm gonna finish dinner up. My lady will be home a little bit from work, and we go, yeah, absolutely.
So what you bringing to the tailgate then?
What am I bringing to the tailgate? Dude, what am I bringing to the tailgate? You guys call them empanadas, but I call them pastelillos. In Spanish, it's like a shell, almost like a taco with like a nice little crust on it. You can put chicken in it, olives, veggies, you can go beef, something like that. So I'm bringing some pastelillos to the tailgate.
You definitely invited them, bro. And I appreciate you.
I appreciate that. Hey, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, Theo.